It was Monday, the 22nd of November, 1897, in the village of Saint-Canoud, Quebec province, Canada. The morning had broken cold and grey over the small Catholic community, where church bells marked the hours and wood smoke hung low between the modest wooden houses. The village sat in farming country, where men worked as carpenters and carters, and women took in sewing or taught school when respectable employment could be found. On this particular morning, Cordelia Viau, aged 32, made her way back from her parents' house along the frozen road. She wore a dark dress and shawl against the November wind. She was known throughout Saint-Canoud as the church organist, a woman of musical talent who played without payment during services and weddings. Her husband, Isidore Poirier, was a carpenter, 10 years her senior, a man known for his devotion to his Catholic faith and his willingness to travel wherever work might be found. They had been married for 8 years and lived in a house Isidore had built with his own hands. There were no children. When Cordelia reached her door that morning, she found it locked. She knocked. No answer came. What the blacksmith would discover inside would transform a morning of ordinary village routine into something far darker, and would expose secrets that had been whispered about for years. Cordelia Viau had been born on the 22nd of June, 1865, in Ville de Saint-Scholastique, the youngest child in a respectable family. Her father, Noël Viau, had ensured she received an education at a school run by religious sisters, where she learned letters and numbers alongside training in domestic skills and music. Her 3 older sisters became teachers. One brother entered the priesthood. As the youngest, Cordelia was cherished, looked after, supported. In 1889, when she was 24, a man named Isidore Poirier began courting her. He was 34, known for his strong work ethic and honest nature. The courtship was brief. On the 4th of November 1889, they were married at the church in Saint-Canoud. It was a happy occasion, attended by family and friends. Isidore had built them a modest house. Cordelia worked as a seamstress, contributing to the household income with her needlework. Together, they maintained a humble yet respectable life. Both were active members of the church community. Isidore adhered strictly to Catholic tradition. Cordelia was admired for her musical abilities and became the parish organist, a position of some pride. She played during services without requesting payment, and her talent made her valued within the congregation. It was at church that Cordelia met Samuel Parslow. He came from a good family but remained unmarried. He worked as a handyman and eventually began assisting Isidore with carpentry projects and various tasks around the Poirier household. There were chores Cordelia could not manage, and Samuel took them on. His presence became familiar, particularly when Isidore traveled for work. By 1895, employment opportunities in Saint-Canoud had become limited, and Isidore took a position in Fresno, California, leaving Cordelia behind for weeks at a time. During one of these absences, a letter arrived from Father Pinet, the parish priest, urging Isidore to return home immediately. The priest wrote carefully, avoiding direct accusations, but hinting at serious marital troubles. The message was unmistakable. Rumors had spread through the village regarding Cordelia and Samuel, who were seen together with unusual frequency. Isidore replied simply that he knew his wife better than the priest did. When he returned to Saint-Canoud, relations between husband and wife appeared normal, though the gossip continued. Despite Isidore's long hours and dedication to his work, the couple struggled financially. They had accumulated significant debt. The strain created tension, which was worsened by Isidore's growing reliance on alcohol. His drinking, combined with work pressures and financial instability, widened the gap between him and his wife. The village gossips insisted that Isidore's drinking was driven solely by his wife's alleged infidelities. Samuel Parslow, born in 1863, was much closer in age to Cordelia than her husband. With Isidore often away for weeks, many in the village believed that Cordelia and Samuel had formed a relationship that crossed boundaries of what was considered socially and morally acceptable. In close-knit communities, such talk spread quickly. Soon it seemed everyone was discussing Cordelia Poirier and Samuel Parslow, and how they appeared unusually happy in each other's company. In February of 1894, Isidore drafted a will naming his wife as his sole beneficiary. Within months, the rumors about Cordelia's behavior intensified. Her father attempted to intervene. The village priest spoke with her. She was urged to distance herself from Samuel Parslow. Cordelia defied them. She continued to spend considerable time with him, further alienating herself from those who sought to guide her back to propriety. On the 17th of January, 1897, Cordelia persuaded her husband to take out a life insurance policy for $2,000. Shortly thereafter, she wrote to the secretary of the insurance company in Montreal with an unusual inquiry. She asked whether the policy would still pay out if a husband died under unusual circumstances, such as being murdered, poisoned, or disappeared with his remains later found. The secretary confirmed that it would. In October, the policy premium went unpaid. The company sent reminders on the 1st and 14th of November, warning that the policy would lapse if payment was not made by the 24th. Cordelia ignored these notices. She did not send the premium. The deadline approached. On Sunday, the 21st of November, 1897, Isidore spent the day at home in Saint-Canu, resting after a long week of work. He remained in the house, undisturbed, while Cordelia followed her usual Sunday routine. She attended church, where she exchanged pleasantries with Samuel Parslow after the congregation dispersed. Both returned briefly to the Poirier home that afternoon before departing separately. Cordelia went to her parents' house for the night. Cordelia returned to the village the following morning. When she reached her house, she found the door locked. She made her way instead to the church, where she had been scheduled to play the organ for a wedding ceremony. She was the only person in the parish willing to play without payment, and her contribution was greatly appreciated. After the service concluded, she returned to her home. The door remained locked. She could not gain entry. After several moments of apparent unease, Cordelia sought help from her neighbor, a blacksmith named Nazaire Brouillet. He agreed to assist. He climbed through a window and unlocked the house from inside. Cordelia did not enter herself. She asked him to search the rooms. Her eyes darted nervously, as if she dreaded what might be found. Brouillet moved through the house. When he entered the bedroom, he was faced with a horrifying sight. Isidore Poirier lay motionless on the bed. His throat had been cut. A butcher's knife lay beside him. Blood marked the walls and floor. Furniture was overturned. There was evidence that Isidore had been drinking before his death, which suggested alcohol may have played a role in the events that had unfolded. The gruesome scene left Cordelia so overwhelmed that she was unable to provide coherent explanation. Her shock rendered her nearly speechless. The police were contacted and arrived to examine the scene. The investigators wondered initially whether Isidore's injuries might have been self-inflicted. While they conducted their work inside the house, Cordelia was comforted by neighbors. She confided that her husband had been drinking heavily in recent days and had not been acting like himself. She shared her belief that he had tragically taken his own life. The following day, newspapers announced that Isidore Poirier had died by his own hand. However, the investigators examined the evidence more closely. Inconsistencies began to emerge. The sheer violence of the injuries, the position of the butcher's knife near the door rather than in the victim's hand, pointed toward foul play rather than self-harm. They also discovered a woman's shoe print pressed into the blood-stained floorboards. Although the investigators remained silent publicly, they became convinced that Isidore had fallen victim to a deliberate and brutal act of murder. The post-mortem examination was conducted by the attending physician. His findings confirmed that Isidore Poirier had been brutally murdered. The nature and position of the wounds indicated that the injuries could not have been self-inflicted. The blade had opened the throat with considerable force. There were defensive wounds on the hands and arms, suggesting that Isidore had attempted to defend himself during the attack. The pattern of blood on the walls and floor indicated a violent struggle had taken place in the confined space of the bedroom. The doctor noted that while alcohol was present in the victim's system, the quantity was not sufficient to render him unconscious. Isidore would have been aware of the attack as it occurred. Items were catalogued and sealed. The butcher's knife was examined and found to have been recently sharpened. The blade matched the pattern of the wounds. The furniture showed signs of having been displaced during a struggle. The bedclothes were heavily stained. Investigators questioned Mrs. Poirier, the mother of the deceased. She lived with 2 daughters, both employed at a local boot and shoe factory. She described Isidore as a hard-working and sober man of good character. She insisted that while he never voiced complaints about his wife, she suspected the marriage had been unhappy. She revealed that she had not seen her daughter-in-law in over 4 years, believing this estrangement resulted from Cordelia's unwillingness to maintain family connections. Her statement added to the sense of mystery surrounding her son's death. The revelation that this was murder caused both fear and outrage in the small village of Saint-Canu. The community, unaccustomed to such violence, was left in shock. Part B. Mid-video engagement. 50 to 70 words. If you're finding this case as compelling as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us continue researching and sharing these forgotten stories from history. We also read every comment, so let us know your thoughts on this case below. Now, let's continue. On the 25th of November, authorities arrested Cordelia Poirier and Samuel Parslow in connection with the crime. Both were taken to the police station for interview. Both denied any wrongdoing and claimed they had nothing to do with Isidore's death. They maintained this pretense until Detective Maskell applied considerable persuasion. What followed were confessions that revealed the horrifying truth of what had occurred in that bedroom on Sunday afternoon. Following the preliminary inquiry, the magistrate formally committed Cordelia and Samuel to stand trial at the criminal court, which was set to begin on the 7th of January, 1898. The case drew significant public interest. It was decided that the trial would be presided over by Justice Taschereau. The trial officially began on the 17th of January. The courtroom was filled to capacity. Newspaper reporters documented every detail, while members of the public crowded into the gallery. Damning evidence began to surface. The court learned of the will drafted in February 1894, naming Cordelia as sole beneficiary. Testimony revealed the rumors that had circulated about Cordelia and Samuel. The prosecution informed the court that Cordelia had persuaded her husband to take out the $2,000 life insurance policy and of her peculiar inquiry to the insurance company regarding payment in cases of murder or disappearance. The notices warning of policy lapse were presented as evidence. The timing was significant. Isidore had died on the 22nd of November, just 2 days before the policy would have expired. Many witnesses confirmed their awareness of Cordelia's relationship with Samuel. All described Isidore as a hard-working and decent man. The confessions obtained by Detective Maskell were presented, though these would later be called into question. Cordelia had admitted that Samuel had pressured her since January to kill her husband, that he had purchased a revolver in Montreal in October, that she had objected to its use, fearing the noise would attract attention, that he had sharpened the butcher's knife a week before the crime. Samuel's confession differed. He claimed Cordelia had not only participated, but had actively encouraged the murder. He described entering the bedroom while Isidore slept, with Cordelia standing on the opposite side of the bed whispering, "Kill him, kill him." He described the struggle, the victim grabbing the blade, the final moments before death. On the 2nd of February 1898, Cordelia Poirier and Samuel Parslow were found guilty of murder. However, before sentencing, a legal dispute arose over the admissibility of the confessions. The method used to extract them was questioned. The court ruled the confessions could not be used as evidence. New trials were ordered for both defendants. Cordelia's retrial began on the 5th of December, 1898, and lasted 11 days. Despite renewed scrutiny, the outcome remained unchanged. She was found guilty of murder and sentenced to hang. Samuel's trial commenced on the 19th of December, and attracted a large and boisterous crowd. The courtroom was packed with spectators who shouted and jostled for space, creating such chaos that several women were injured in the commotion. His trial lasted until the 29th of December. Despite considerable public sympathy, the jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict. Following the two trials, a petition was raised requesting clemency for Samuel Parslow. It seemed the jury and the public had mixed feelings about his culpability. Many believed he had fallen under the influence of a manipulative woman. Despite this petition, the judge delivered a grave and unwavering sentence. He described Samuel as a man who had assisted a bad woman in murdering her husband. He too was sentenced to death. Both Cordelia and Samuel appealed the verdicts. These appeals were denied. On the 27th of November, 1897, Isidore Poirier had been buried. The service was attended by most of the village. The community mourned a man they had known as hard-working and devout, a carpenter who had built his own house with his own hands. At 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday, the 10th of March, 1899, Cordelia Poirier and Samuel Parslow were hanged at the jail at Saint-Scholastique. It was reported that both went to their deaths quietly. The executions were carried out according to the procedures of the time. Death was recorded as immediate in both cases. They were later buried at a cemetery in Saint-Canu. The newspapers carried accounts of the case for weeks afterward. The story of the church organist and the handyman became a subject of fascination and moral instruction. Editorials reflected on the dangers of infidelity, the importance of religious guidance, and the consequences of defying social expectations. The insurance company that had received Cordelia's peculiar inquiry released a statement confirming they had never paid out the policy, as the premium had lapsed 2 days after the murder occurred. In Saint-Canu, life continued. The church required a new organist. The position was filled. Sunday services resumed their familiar rhythm. The house that Isidore had built with his own hands stood empty for a time before being sold. The gossip that had swirled through the village for years gradually faded, replaced by newer scandals and concerns. Years later, the names Cordelia Viau and Samuel Parslow were spoken only in passing, cautionary figures in a tale that older residents would sometimes recall when warning the young about the wages of sin and the dangers of moral transgression. The case file remained in the records at Saint-Scholastique, bound in leather and dust. The details were preserved on yellowed pages, but the people themselves became shadows, their voices silenced, their motives known only through the testimony